The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the ECAT staff or board of directors.
Giving a voice to the voiceless, pulling stories out of the shadows and putting them under the spotlight, making sure that each person is valued and cared for. This is Humanity First with Peter Evers, presented by BAMZ.
Hi everybody, it's Peter Evers here in another edition of Humanity First. And this week we have a pretty regular guest on the show. We have Mayor Robert Sullivan, the Mayor of Brockton. And he's been on many times and addressing some of the issues that are going on locally in our city. And maybe a little bit broader scope on some of the issues that are happening nationally and statewide that affect this great city. And maybe some talk a little bit about what's going on this summer, and obviously with kids out of school, what's happening in the city, and how we're reacting to some of the things that are affecting us locally. Crime, the school system, and of course this issue of healthcare and what is happening with the hospitals in Brockton, now that we've heard that Signature Healthcare is going to be closed for a little bit longer than we thought. And there's also some great things going on, like the unveiling of the statue to Marvin Hagler, which we'll talk about as well. And anything else that's of interest to folks in and around the Brockton area. So we'll be right back. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Jamie. I'm an essential worker here at BAMZ, and I'm a nurse. Nurses are essential here at BAMZ because as nurses, we really have the opportunity to make an impact. We have very small ratios, so we have the opportunity to really learn everything about the person served and be able to give the best care. It really serves such a great purpose for me as being a nurse and really why I came into nursing. Learn more about nursing opportunities at bamzjobs.org.
Giving a voice to the voiceless, pulling stories out of the shadows and putting them under the spotlight, making sure that each person is valued and cared for. This is Humanity First with Peter Evers, presented by BAMZ.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Humanity First, and welcome back to Mayor Sullivan. Hi, Mayor Sullivan.
Peter, thank you again for having me on your show. I love joining you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, it's always great to talk about such a wonderful city of Brockton, and you are such a great ambassador for the city. And I know that we've just met, that I saw you earlier on today at a celebration for the Athena Award to Beverly Williams, who is a member of our staff who has been with BAMZ for about 20 years. So it was very nice of you to come and say a few words there. And I understand that you were very busy at another event today, which is as a big boxing fan. You tell us a little bit about the Marvin Hagler.
Yeah, no, thank you. So really historic day in the city of Brockton, and we unveiled and dedicated a unbelievable life-size bronze statue of Marvelous Marvin Hagler, undisputed middleweight champion of the world from Brockton. He reigned from 1980 to 87 and was just really an example of someone that grew up in the city, overcame adversity, was committed and dedicated, and didn't take no for an answer. And he became the reigning champ. And, in my humble opinion, he was the best middleweight champion in the 80s. And I was a kid growing up in the 80s. It was great. If you like boxing, the sweet science, I mean, you had Hagler and Hearns and Sugar Ray and Duran and Hampshire, Alan Mentor was the champ. Mentor. Yeah, from England. And that's who Marvelous Marvin defeated to become the champ. And so, when I became mayor, of course, we were dealing with the pandemic and all those things. But I really wanted to articulate that we have an unbelievable statue in Brockton for Rocky Marciano, heavyweight champion of the world. But that was a gift from the World Boxing Council based out of Mexico. And it was a gift originally going to Boston. And then Mayor Menino at the time said, no, it should go to Brockton. And it's huge. It's the largest in the Northern Hemisphere. But Marvin didn't have one. And so I reached out to State Representative Jerry Cassidy and said, Jerry, is there any way we can get a really unbelievable memorial to Marvin? And he said yes. And they came up with $150,000 in the last two legislative cycles. And we created a statue committee. And today, was the unveiling. His wife, Kay, a wife of 31 years, flew in. She lives in New Hampshire, but also in Milan, Italy. And A lot of Hagler family and friends were there, and the statue committee was there. Vito Antifermo had two great fights with Marvin. And why we picked today was actually for two reasons. Number one, 1993 on this day, he was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame up in New York. And also, this is a date that I think it was the first fight with Antifermo. So the anniversary was today. So I'm excited as a Brocktonian, but I'm also really thrilled that it tells the story of the next generation. That statue will be there forever. Yeah. Everybody really commented, Peter, that it looks just like him throwing his left hook.
It does.
The belts that are there. So we went out and looked for different national sculpting companies. And we went with Brockton, which is in Minnesota. And it really looks like Marvelous Marvin throwing a punch. And so today was a really great day. We had over 400 people. I wanted it to be located downtown, the statue, with all the development going on and the commuter rail. And really where it is right now, it's on Petronelli Way, which when I was a kid was called Ward Street. But he would have run by this statue because he ran up and down Ward Street to go to the gym, the Petronelli Brothers Gym, Goody and Pat Petronelli. Yeah. And, you know, so we created a new street called Marvelous Marvin Hagler Way. And so now this is a dedicated park, Marvelous Marvin Hagler Park. So it was just a great day, Peter, a really great day in the City of Champions.
It is. And, you know, of course, I want to tell a little story. I was in England when Hagler was at his peak, and Britain is crazy about boxing and actually has a couple of good ones now. But when the fight with Sugar Ray Leonard happened, which I think is one of the biggest travesties of boxing.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. I agree.
I totally do. There's this really funny story on the BBC. Sugar Ray was being interviewed by a guy called Hugh McIlvenney, who was the biggest boxing commentator and writer, very, very bright guy. And they had this really interesting conversation. And you could tell that McIlvenney wanted to say something. And right at the end, he said, "I got to tell you something. I don't think you won that fight."
Did he say that?
He did.
Did he?
And Sugar Ray pushes the table over. You can probably look this up, and walks out, and that's the end of the interview.
Really?
But there was something in Sugar Ray's mind that said, "You might be right."
Oh, yeah, he was right. I mean, how do you take the belt away from a champ on a split decision? You can't do it. So, but you know, when you think about boxing, Tommy Hearns, Hitman Hearns, best 3 rounds, not just in the middleweight division, but I would say in boxing, you know, it was a war. And we had the ability to talk about Marvelous Marvin as a dedicated philanthropist. He has funded so many kids that go to Massasoit Community College. He was a trustee there, and scholarships, and just, you know, at the end of the day, he never forgot about Brockton and where he came from.
And just a stand-up dude, you know, just a really good guy. Had the pleasure of bumping into him actually in a pub in Boston back in the early 90s. And of course, many people will know that he was an action star in Italy, right?
Yes, he was.
Where he went after when he finished his career.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, typical of Brocktonian in many ways. And I just wanted to shift the conversation, if we can, to what's going to be going on this summer and what's happening in Brockton, you know. And there's a few things that are on my mind. First of all, the hospital situation, you know, it is... we've had a bit of a perfect storm in some ways, right? With the filing for bankruptcy of the steward system, and then we've had another delay in the opening of Signature. Although I will say they have been open. They've had their urgent care centers, and they've done a good job with that. Any inside scoop on that?
Yeah, so you know, I've created a really good working relationship, friendship with Bob Haffey, the CEO of Brockton Hospital, great guy, Signature Healthcare, and also Matt Hesketh, a great guy, CEO over at Good Sam. And I speak to both those gentlemen quite often. Bob and his team give me updates every other week, and so there's a little delay. The hope was to open it up in June or July. Now it looks like it's probably going to be early September after August, so early fall. It's not perfect, it's not ideal, but we're all hopeful that it opens up as soon as possible, because it's going to take away the burden for South Shore and the influx at Good Sam. And then the same thing with Good Sam. The good news is I've been told, reassured, myself, Congressman Lynch, Senator Markey, state delegation, that Good Sam's not going to close. It will be acquired. But we need both of those facilities to be operational. Of course, with the VA as well, right? But you know, the Good Sam is critical care trauma, right? So it's cardiac care, stroke care, and it's a regional hospital located, both of them in Brockton, but they draw from outside of Brockton. So in the near future, but not just quite yet.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. And any idea about acquisition? Any big players in the market?
Yeah, I'm not privy to that, but I've been advocating that my preference would be a nonprofit.
Me too.
That has an experience in a community like Brockton, and I just think it makes sense. It makes business sense, but it makes common sense and medical sense. So I'm crossing my fingers.
Yeah, I mean, in another life, when the acquisition happened with Stuart, I was working at Kearney Hospital, of course, which was part of the Caritas Christi. And it was a totally different culture when Stuart came in. And, I would agree with you. I think we need to move back to the roots of medicine, which are, not profit oriented, but, working with populations, looking at disparities of health, making sure that we're fighting those social justice issues. And, certainly need to do that.
Peter, I was 10 years as a volunteer board member. I chaired the board at the hospital at Good Sam, and I agree with you. It changed once Cerebus, the hedge fund down in Manhattan, Wall Street, and then Stuart. So, it's a lesson learned, tough lesson learned, but we need exceptional healthcare provided. And we'll move forward, but we'll move forward together.
Yeah. Let's get back to that. I like that idea. One thing I wanted to talk a little and broaden this conversation out a little bit is that, I live in South Boston, not too far away, and I actually probably spend more time in Brockton than I do in South Boston. And I've known this, I've worked 3 different times over 30 years in Brockton. And I've always felt that Brockton gets a bad rap when you put the news on the local news, and even sometimes the international news. I mean, I hope that SportsCenter run a piece tonight on Marvelous Marvin Hagler.
I hope so.
I really do.
I hope so.
But you might see a story, about a fight at Brockton High School where a teacher gets a bruise on. I'm not diminishing it, but whereas you wouldn't necessarily hear that about Wellesley or Weston or Winchester. I'm going with the W's.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Does that frustrate you sometimes when the lead story about Brockton is always something negative and a portrayal of a city which has so much more than that?
It does. And not just as the mayor, it does as a lifelong Brocktonian. My wife and I met at Brockton High. We're raising our kids here. My parents are still here. My in-laws are still here. Brockton is a city. It's the only city in Plymouth County, 106,000 people. So it's a massive city, right? And so, to not really do fair reporting on sharing the great news of the kids that are going on to Ivy League schools or going to serve our nation or going to the workforce. And, it is frustrating. I mean, I understand news could be sensationalism and all that stuff, but we have our own story to tell. And, as the mayor, my whole goal has been to market Brockton like a corporation. It's a business. We're in the people business, right? It's a $500 million business. Yeah. So, I just try to work with the administration. The governor and lieutenant governor are huge supporters. Healy Driscoll administration, huge supporters of the city of Brockton. Again, developers investing in Brockton. We have the commuter stop so you can jump on a train, get into Boston 35 minutes. And largest public high school east of the Mississippi still. And it's not just public school. We have charter school and parochial schools, and we have professional baseball, right? The knockouts are here now, right? We have the Brockton Rocks.
I have a couple of tickets.
Yeah. So I mean, we have that. We have the Fuller Craft Museum, which is one of the best craft museums in the nation, and we have a municipal golf course, which is unbelievable. And now we're going to be opening up the East Side Pool, which is a $6 million renovation from the federal government, and that will be opening this summer. And we have the pool at the high school. We have an ice skating rink at the high school. So it does frustrate me, Peter. It really does. But I know the Brockton, and the Brockton that's depicted on the news is not the Brockton that I know every day. But we can do better. We can do better. We're dealing with issues. There's definitely drugs and mental health and behavioral health and alcohol issues and crime. But when you have 106,000 people, you have to expect to deal with those things. And so I concur with you. I hope ESPN runs a story tonight. I know the Globe was there. The Herald was there today at the Marvelous Marvin Hagler. So, the news media was there, and we'll just continue to forge ahead. And it's kind of like how great BAMSI does. You know what I mean? We got to get that message out.
Well, of course, our fate is absolutely tied in with Brockton. Correct. Because we're such an organization that is Brockton-centric. Although we go out to Worcester and down to Plymouth, but, workforce is definitely an issue with us. We have a number of vacancies, and oftentimes it's because people can't find housing. Right. I think about the fact that when in 2000, the average price of a home in Brockton was $350,000. Now it's $450,000, right? I mean, that's good, but it's also difficult for new Americans and people coming into a gateway city. And I'm really proud of the fact that I work in a gateway city. I mean, this is what America is about, right? Yes. A city where people can come, which is how we were founding, and make our way.
That's right.
And that worries me. What is our housing stock? Are we able to? And of course, we have an influx of new Americans that we're dealing as well. So there's a lot of pressure on Brockton at the moment as well. And I mean, housing is an issue, right? It's not just a Brockton issue, but my memory of Brockton is Brockton was always a place where people could get a start, and hopefully we're thinking about affordable housing.
Well, the great thing about affordable housing in Brockton, number one, is when we adopted Chapter 40R, which is called Smart Growth Zoning. Any developer within an area of Brockton, which is in the zone, has to at least give no less than 20% affordable housing in the developments in the core of the city. So we're seeing people, come to Brockton right now because it is cheaper compared to Dorchester and Southie and Charlestown and even Quincy and Braintree. So we're seeing some people, but then we also seeing some people leave and go to New Bedford and Fall River. So it's a little bit of a balancing act. And Brockton's always been a welcoming, inclusive, unbelievable city for new arrivals, including my grandparents, right? I'm a dual citizen. I'm an Irish citizen and an American citizen. And, largest Cape Verdean population in America is here in Brockton, right. And a huge amount of wonderful residents from Haiti and Angola and Nigeria and Latinx communities. So it's something that I'm cognizant of. It's something that the city planner works on. And we, articulate to the developers, you can't do less than 20%, but you could do more than 20%.
Right. That's right. Pushing that and continuing to do it. I think about how I was thinking the other day that, Manchester, New Hampshire, right, is actually the same size as Brockton, right? And that's the largest city in New Hampshire. Yes. And then I thought, I'm a bit of a nerd about these things. I thought, I wonder how many, if Brockton was in how many states would it be the biggest city in that particular state? And I didn't finish, but I counted like 15 or 16 states.
Really?
Right? Yeah. I mean, you think about Lincoln, Nebraska, right? Yes. Smaller than Brockton.
Yes.
And actually, on game day for the Husky, there's more. They double because 100,000 people come in to watch. Can you imagine a college team watch that?
Imagine that.
But this is a city of consequence, right? If you begin to think about that, a city that is giving people a chance, and conversations like this do help to make people think, what about Brockton? When they're thinking about relocating. The same way that people think about, what about Gloucester or whatever. And I think we've got to keep pushing Brockton. And think about it. It is equidistant almost from Providence and Boston.
Yes.
People think it's a long way. I will say that the commuter rail isn't always a good thing for us, because then people can just hop on the train and go to Boston. But we getting those people back,
yes,
because they're saying, oh my goodness, maybe they pay more in Boston, but it costs me $350 a month to get in on the train, which is ridiculous if you ask me. Or I've got to park and the cost of living and things like that. Yeah, we are. This is a little jewel, and I think you're doing a good job of sort of countering some of that.
Peter, it's funny. I some people say I have bad luck, right? On Murphy's Law, I became mayor. I dealt with COVID. We had the ramifications of the brutal murder of George Floyd, and then the fire at Brockton Hospital and the school side deficit we're dealing with. But my view is this: we are an unbelievable city. We really are. And we need to continue to welcome people to Brockton, but also showcase the talent that's here, the extracurricular activities that are here, the offerings that are here. You're right. You can jump in a car and get into Providence, go into Boston, you can go to Cape Cod. So geographically, we're located in a great place. But the number one asset, and if Brockton was a stock, we should all buy it, are the people that live in the city of champions.
Totally. I mean, these are hardworking people who are making the city great. I do think, the inclusive. I think you've done a good job as well on the inclusivity issue. Last Saturday or the Saturday before, you came and spoke at our Pride celebration, which I think have been the first in Brockton. So that was wonderful. Juneteenth is coming up. Juneteenth has just happened. And again, this ability to have conversations about inclusivity, and these conversations about, when you look at inclusion, when you look at equity, you're not taking away from one group of people. You're actually leveling the playing field. And all of the, we were just at the Athena Awards, and one of the things that somebody said was, when you get diversity and leadership in organizations, the results are better.
Yes.
because the field of knowledge is wider. Pushing that as well, I think, is something that Brockton has really benefited from. So I thank you for that.
No, I appreciate it. And again, I appreciate you always offering me the time to come here. And, you know, I'm probably the number one cheerleader of Brockton. I love the city. This is a special community, and I'm biased, but you know, it's the efforts of you and your team at BAMSI as well that make a difference each and every day in people's lives in the city, but also, you know, beyond Brockton. And that's what's so special about Brockton. People may live in Brockton and then move out. A lot of my friends from the high school did that. We graduated, I came back, they didn't. But you're always a Brocktonian, right? Yeah. And I think that's the goal. We talk about City of Champions, but it's truly the people that live and work in Brockton that are the champions. And so I'm just happen to be mayor now, but I'll be a lifelong Brocktonian.
Yeah, and we're very privileged to do that work in a great city as well. So thank you so much,
you, Peter.
as usual, for coming in, and hopefully we can have another conversation soon.
I look forward to it. Thanks.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.